Hello everybody. Today we're going to be taxidermying this gopher in another one of those double bird flip wall mounts. The first thing we have to do for this mount is to cut it in half. I want to make sure I leave myself a decent amount to work with. So we're going to go kind of right about in here, just like maybe the 3/4-ish mark. I'm going to start. I'm going to try my best to not cut into the stomach. It won't affect the end product at all, it just makes an extra big mess. So if you can avoid it, it's for the better. With these gophers and small animals, it is sometimes an almost impossible task to not do that, making a cut like this, just because that stomach wall is so thin, but we will try our best. I'm just going to take my finger and kind of work my finger around my belly, try and separate it from the hide a bit. Give myself a little bit of leeway. Once you get that hide separated from the stomach, you're trying to go in there and cut it without trying to rip everything open. Try and keep your cut roughly lined up. Somebody might be asking, why don't I just skin the thing normally? It's because I have a plan for the back half of this gopher that I'm going to do, so I kind of want to save it as best I can. And pull that hide down. Fingers through there. There, now we got that all run all the way around, so we can now work our way down the rest of the way. Again, being fairly careful, we're not ripping into that stomach. You also want to be careful when you're skinning these guys that you're not pulling directly on the fur. You want to make sure you're pulling on the hide, because you will pull the hair out of these guys really easily. Pull that all the way down. We're just going to be skinning around the paw so we can get that down as far as we can. Throw it in there. We're going to actually remove the legs from the hide. Same on this side. All the way down to that joint. And then start working our way down the head. Here is about the ears, so you could have cut through there carefully. Here's the other ear, same thing. You want to cut, this is the line where the hide is, you can see there's the hide to where it's skinned off. You don't want to cut in line with that, you want to cut back from that line to cut the ear cartilage. There's the ear right there. If you cut in line with the hide, you're going to end up with a huge gaping hole where the ear is, and you're going to have to try and fix that afterwards. So always go back from the hide line when you're cutting off the ears. We're coming up to the eyes here. Just be really careful around those. The second eye right here. So same thing, there's the hide line there. I was going to go a little bit further back from there. And just keep working your knife, keep lots of pressure on pulling on that hide with this thumb. Just keep your knife going over top of it. Excuse me. And there, you'll have the eye skinned out, same size it's supposed to be, without any issues. We get to the mouth, just free up both the cheeks like that. And kind of work the bottom off with just your fingers, just gently pull it off. And work that down to the end of the nose. And then you want to keep your knife kind of angled in towards that face so you don't end up cutting a hole through the end of the nose. Okay, so we're going to put this guy off to the side for now because we got to get this guy fleshed, and then we'll have to build a form for it. So we'll keep this guy because we're going to use this to build our form off of afterwards. Okay, to flesh this guy, normally I use just a squirrel forming board, but we're in the process of moving, so all my stuff is packed up. So I have a piece of cardboard as a substitute, and I'm just going to use this stirrup flesher. So just gently work that all the way down, scraping all the fat and the meat off of this guy. Gophers are very fatty animals, so it's really important to get all that stuff off of there. Otherwise you're going to have issues with fur slipping and not drying properly and everything else. So really important to get all that stuff off of there. See on this side here, the real big layer of fat back there. You want to be careful you don't over scrape them either. If you scrape too hard, you'll actually damage the hair roots and the hair will fall out that way as well. So it's kind of a fine balance. You got to make sure you get everything off that's not supposed to be there, but not go too hard because that'll cause you issues as well. So it's all practice. That's the nice thing about things like gophers are fairly readily available. So if you're in the process of learning how to do taxidermy, things like gophers and squirrels are great things to practice on, because if you mess it up, not that it's not a huge deal or a big deal, but it's a little easier to handle messing up something like that than a deer or something that's a little harder to come by. So any of these, like, there's kind of like a meat membrane here, you don't really have to worry about that. Anything like that will dry. It's mostly just the fat that I'm worried about. So yeah, any of this kind of meaty membrane stuff, that stuff all dries really good, so I'm not too concerned about that. Around the face with the lips, so you can try and get some of this meat and stuff off of here. Just the bigger chunks. A lot of this stuff will dry really hard as well, and you won't have to worry about it, but try and get some of the excess off if you can. That's looking pretty good, I think. So I'm going to get this guy put into borax, and then we're going to start working on the form. I got the borax here. So with small animals like this, I use the borax method pretty much exclusively for preserving them. So do that. Just take the hide and work it in that borax. Just make sure you got a really good coating all over the whole thing. Make sure you lift up the arms, get inside the armpits, make sure there's no folds. Like you can see there's a fold there where the borax didn't touch the hide. Just make sure the whole entire thing, there again there's a fold. The whole entire thing has a coating of borax on it, like that. That's pretty well all you have to do. Just get that really good coating on there. You don't have to like leave it sitting in the borax overnight or anything like that. Just make sure it has a good coating on it, and that'll start kind of drying out and almost mummifying the hide. And it works very, very well. It's very fast, it's very cost effective. And I've got mounts that I've done 15-20 years ago using this method that still look as good as the day I did them. So anybody that tells you using the borax method is not going to last in the long term, it works. So as long as you are flushing that hide properly, you're not having any issues with fat rotting and things like that, there's zero problems with this method. Next thing we got to do is make the form for this guy. So for that, I made this off the Gopher skull mold that I have previously. It's the only part I used foam for. So got that for the head, and the rest of the body is going to be made out of wood wool. So for that, we're just going to take some wood wool, and I kind of got him in roughly the shape that I want him laying out here. And you just take some string like this, and we just start wrapping that wood wool until it's the shape that we want it to be. So these guys, the form is fairly basic. It's essentially just a tube, and then we'll put wire in it to get it in the proper shape. The biggest thing we got to do is just make sure it's the right length and diameter so it matches the body. You want to make sure you wrap lots of string around this guy, because that's what's going to give it the density to actually hold the shape. If you don't put enough string around it while you're doing this, then it's kind of loose and isn't going to hold itself very nice. So just make sure you get it dense enough, tight enough that it'll actually do what it's supposed to do. So roughly about there. Actually shorten this up a little bit. This. Something like that. Looks about right. Just add a little bit more on the front here. Just to make sure I get enough thickness. Something about like that. Looks pretty good. Just run a couple more, get some of those loose strands of the wood wool taken care of. And I'll tie this off, and this doesn't have to be anything crazy, just tie off the string. Like that, and there's our basic form. Fits on him, just like that. And then what we're gonna do is take a wire. In there. Sharpen one end, and the other end just kind of bend over into a little loop like that. And then we're going to run that wire up through the whole body. And then we're going to push that other end into there. So we have the wire coming out the top, and that's where we're going to put the head on that wire. Shorten that up a little bit. Add a bit of super glue. That's what's going to hold that in position. And then put that head make sure everything's straight. Like that. So that's how it's going to sit in the wall on a plaque like this, and then you'll have his arms coming out like that. Normally with small animals like this, the method I've been using lately is to sew the mouth shut rather than trying to tuck the lips. But I had an idea, I'm going to try it on this guy and see how it works, of just using super glue and super gluing those lips together. So I'm going to give it a try, I'm going to see how it works. Hopefully it works as good in reality as it does in my brain. But I'm going to give it a try and see how that works. See if this might be a good alternative method for sewing. Tucking lips on small animals like a squirrel is a real pain. So sewing them seems to work pretty good, but I just thought I would try this and see how this works. Carefully kind of put everything in position. Get that glue in there. Pinch it together with tweezers. There. And then if you take a little bit of borax, once you kind of have the glue where you want it to be like that, sprinkle some borax on that. The borax will stick to that glue, and it actually helps prevent so you can touch it with your finger without getting your finger stuck to it. So otherwise sometimes that super glue will last a little while and then you'll have to deal with that sticking to everything. So let's get this guy flipped around. See how that looks. Fingers crossed. Well, that's manageable. Look at that. Look how nice that looks. Just an alternative method. We'll see how it handles getting pulled over the form, but initially I'm quite impressed with that. The last thing we got to do before we start putting this guy together is make some arms. So I've made one already. I'm going to make the other one here. It's the exact same process as the body. Just take some wood wool and start wrapping it. Make sure you've got your real arm there, so you can model this one off of it. Make sure it's the right size. Pull some of that out of there because we don't need that much. That excess. Actually, shrink that down a little bit because it's a little bit too big still. So got some of that out of there. Should be able to get that tighter. Yeah, it's looking better. Some of that. That's the nice thing about the wood rolls. You can always add or take away very quickly, as opposed to foam forms. It's not as easy a process to modify them as it is the wood wool. So that's why I prefer it. And you can also make whatever you want. Sometimes you can't find a commercial form in the shape you want, but you can always make it with wood wool. Whatever you imagine, you can create. Okay, so we've got both of our arms now, so we're going to take some wire. We're going to run a wire through those. Like that. And that's what we're going to use to hold their shape while this thing dries. That. Now that we got the arms made, we're going to put those into the form. So first thing I'm going to do is kind of push that up into the, kind of the meaty part of the palm, and then I'm going to work that hide down around it like that. So you're left with the arm there. I kind of want the hand part of it loose right now. I'm not going to glue it or anything like that because I need to get it in the proper position afterwards. But just work that hide down there. And then we'll do the next one the same way. Stick that wire into that meaty part. And then work that all the way up. Just like that. Should have both the arms there. Like that. Right, and then that way we can put the form in there, then we can put the arms. It's really hard to fit this over top. If you attach those arms to the form first before you pull the hide over it, it's really hard to get everything to fit. If you put the arms in there, then you can attach those to the main form way easier. Okay, before I pull the hide over the form, I'm just going to put a little bit of glue around the mouth, and that will help lock everything into place so it's not shifting around as it dries. It'll also help keep that mouth shut if that super glue doesn't hold. So initially part here, so we'll flip them kind of inside out, push the nose in there, pull that down over. And then when we get to the arms here, I've got a spot here marked. Let the big truck drive by. I've got a spot marked here on the form where the wire is going to go through. I'm going to push that all the way through the body. Right there. And then we're going to give that kind of a twist on the end of it. Pull it back through to lock it into place. Same with this one. Push that wire through right at our mark. Right there. that a twist. Pull that wire back through and that locks that into place. So now we've got both of our arms are locked in where they're supposed to be. And we can position those afterwards however we want them to be. So make sure the head is where it's roughly supposed to be with the eyes. It's looking decent. Work that hide all the way down to the bottom. So he's going to be attached to the wall, something like this. And then like that. So next thing we got to do is pull that hide all the way down. We're going to tie that off into place. So make sure you work that all the way tight because you don't want any loose, saggy spots or anything like that. That's looking good. The eyes are in the right spots. We'll have to pin all this in place and all that, but there's an initial fit. I'm pretty happy with that. Now to attach this, I might actually shorten that body up just a little bit. So I'll take him over and cut that off. I usually make these bodies a little bit longer than they need to be because I can always shorten them up. So these mounts look better when he's not sticking out like a weird snaky looking thing, when they're kind of tighter to the plaque. So I'm going to cut this off right about here, and then we'll attach to the plaque after that. So I got him shortened up now. He's going to sit like on the plaque more or less like that. So what I'm going to do with all this excess hide at the back here, I'm going to take a string. I'm going to tie a knot around that. Just like that. Hold all that extra hide nice and tight. Just like that. And then this extra hide at the back here that's gonna, after the string, that I'm just gonna cut off. Just like that. And then when I attach to the plaque, that's all gonna be squished up in the back there, and you're not gonna see any of that. But that just helps hold all that hide tight. So we'll get this guy attached to the plaque, and then we're going to start doing the pinning and positioning, and then we'll be ready to sit in front of a fan and let it dry. Got our plaque here. I drill out a hole in the plaque like this, so that Gopher will kind of sit a little bit recessed into the plaque. Just helps the transition a little bit with some of these weirder half body mounts. I'm just going to put some glue inside there just to help hold it all solid. that. And then push him in there. This is where you really want to make sure when you're making that form that you make it dense enough so when you put a screw into it, it'll actually hold. So we got our screw holding that now, the glue also holding it. Bend them up into position we want them to be, roughly like that. And then I usually take this and just kind of pull some of the hair out from underneath. Again, just makes that transition to the black look a little more normal. Make sure everybody's straight. Tighten that up slightly more. You don't want to go too tight that it starts stripping out the wood wool inside there, but you want to make sure it's tight enough that it's actually gonna hold it in place. Around the eyes, kind of tuck in that inner eyelid around it. Let's put a couple pins. Gophers have kind of those narrowy, kind of like not super circular eyes. Like a squirrel has more circular-ish eyes. Gopher has kind of more of those, almost like they're squinting. So again, here is that inner eyelid right here. We're gonna tuck all that up inside. And into that clay that we put in there. And then I'm just going to put a couple pins just to help hold those eyes in the proper spot. Take a look, make sure. You want to look at this guy as you're pinning it to make sure the eyes haven't shifted. You want to make sure they're looking the same on both sides, because otherwise he's going to look a little odd, right? So make sure everything's even. And then around the mouth. Pin both sides of the mouth. So same thing, it doesn't dry like twisted one way or the other. You want corners of the mouth to both be the same. That nose. Put it up more a little bit. That, and I'll put a couple pins, one in each nostril. Same thing to try and help hold that nose even. And right in the middle of the mouth here, I'm just going to put one more pin just to make sure that doesn't move on us. You just gotta keep looking at it, like put some pins, adjust, and just keep watching it to make sure that everything's sitting where it's supposed to be sitting. You want it all to be even and symmetrical is the biggest thing. So take your time with that, make sure that's all looking the way it's supposed to. Another pin in here. Mouth sitting a little bit lopsided, so we'll add an extra pin just to help hold that where it's supposed to be. It's looking way better. Don't be afraid to use lots of pins if you need to. Pins are cheap. That's what's going to help hold everything where it's supposed to be. So. There, so now he's looking more or less like a gopher again. So, last thing we got to do with this guy is get those hands in the position that we want them to be. So for that, you're going to need some glue and some tweezers. So, what I'm going to do is put a bit of glue on the palm of the hand, just like that. And then start a little bit too much glue. Bending the fingers down into that. I'm just going to clean these off a little bit. Bend those fingers down into that glue. And the excess glue we're just going to wipe off now. That. And do the same on the other side. A little bit of glue on the palm of the hand. Bend those fingers down into it. Wipe away the excess, make sure that's all taken care of there. Now we gotta bend that around. Get them where they're supposed to be, so. And then we'll pin those just to make sure that they don't twist too much. So I don't want that. There. I'm just going to run a pin kind of through the back of the hide into the form we made for the arm. Make sure those fingers stay down where they're supposed to be. A little bit of extra glue there I'll get rid of. Same with the other one. Run it down underneath the hide into that form. Make sure our fingers are all back where they're supposed to be again. So he's a little loose on the form right now, but once that glue all dries and everything, he'll be a lot more solid on there. So at this point, we're just gonna put a fan on it, let it dry, and then we'll come back and take a look at it. Alright, our gopher is pretty well dry and ready to go, so I'm gonna pull out the pins, and then we'll do some painting on him, and then this project will be done. Sometimes those pins can be a little bit stiff to come out, so don't get super rammy with it. I find just kind of give it a light pull as you're turning and they'll come out. If you get too aggressive with it, sometimes you'll tear the hide, especially on smaller animals like this. So, okay, that's looking really good, so I'm gonna go get my paint. And okay, so for the paint, I'm gonna use two different colors. I've got shading gray, which is just a really dark gray, kind of a somewhat transparent, off the eye, whatever that is. I'm gonna just do that just around the edge of the eye, very lightly. That's a lot of times you'll have sort of a lighter skin that kind of dries pale, so it just darkens up around the eyes, brings some life back into those eyes. And then I'm going to grab a Q-tip. Just kind of wipe some of that excess paint off the actual eye. Just like that. And then around the nose, we're going to use a dark brown. And we're just going to lightly paint kind of where the nose pad is, darken that back up, because again, they kind of dry, they sort of get pale colored, so you don't need a whole lot of paint on there, just enough to bring the color back into it. I'm going to take a little tiny bit of that black, I'm just going to put it inside the nostril. And kind of just blend some of that in a little bit. Just adds a little bit more, it's not just one big flat color, it kind of adds a little bit of texture to it. Blend that in. That's looking good. Make sure everything's good and even. And around the paws, I'll just take that brown, and if any of the glue that's a little bit exposed around the paws, just touch it with that brown. It helps kind of blend it in a little bit more. There's touching the claw, so I'll use the darker for that to blend that in. That one's actually looking decent. There's only a tiny little bit there, and a little bit on the claw. I'm trying to paint this so you guys can see it, but I can also see what I'm doing too. So just where the claws are, I'll use that dark to kind of blend in that the glue, and then a little bit of brown further down. That looks good. Okay, we'll get this guy in front of a fan, and we'll give him a brush, and he'll be done. I like using the air compressor before I brush them out, because just any borax residue that might be on there, or just sawdust from anything else that's in the garage here, that's in the fur, blows all that out of there, and then you can use the brush afterwards to kind of get all the hair pointing in the right direction. Here's our final double bird flipping gopher. These guys are always a fun project, and definitely one of our more popular mounts.